Now, to have the law of the Spirit of life in Christ in you, and it sets you free from the law of sin and death. Remember, the law of sin and death was the nature of sin and death that came into Adam by Satan in the Garden of Eden almost 6,000 years ago. Remember, that's what opened up the door for all sickness. Now, let me say it this way, for all curses. Doesn't matter whether generational curses. Generational curse is not some special curse. No, it just means it's something that's been going down from generation to generation. If I said a weekly curse, what would that mean? It's passed every week. See, don't get all spooky. A lot of people are getting too spooky. I wrote this in my book on the law of the Spirit of life in Christ. You ought to get that book. But so many Christians are just getting too... That's why the world thinks we're flaky and stupid and goofy and nuts. Because of so many Christians that they get real spooky and they try to act super spiritual. I have a chapter in here entitled I got one chapter called The Courts of Heaven, where I'm teaching on the courts of heaven. I've heard a lot of teaching on the courts of heaven. I didn't write the chapter until after I heard a lot. And I think there's a lot of good teaching on the courts of heaven. The Bible talks about God's throne room is described as a courtroom. In the book of Psalms, the book of Daniel, Daniel had a vision and saw God, the Ancient of Days, set up in his throne room. And they're called courts. I mean, this is biblical and scriptural. The throne room of God is also it's considered the courts of heaven. And I like that idea because, see, the courts, to me, one of the main things that I've gotten out of what I've studied about the courts of heaven that I like a lot is it's all about, when you think of the throne room being like a courtroom, you start thinking in legal terms. And see, I have a chapter in here, one chapter in this book before the chapter on the courts of heaven. Let me tell you what that chapter is. It's called The Power of Your Divine Rights. And one thing I like about understanding some things about the courts of heaven is that it gave me a greater revelation and reality that everything in the spirit realm is legally based. I don't mean Jewish laws now. Everything's legally based. And I teach a lot on spiritual laws and forces in God's kingdom, how we need to learn how to function in God's spiritual laws and forces. Everything is legally based. And if you can learn how to work the spiritual laws and forces of God's kingdom, then you're going to have great success.